Yo, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox here with another episode of the 2023 WVU football season. It is the preview of West Virginia versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders, a 3:30 kickoff on ESPN Plus from Morgantown, West Virginia. And it's also a gold rush for all who are going to be in attendance, like myself, at Milan Puskar Stadium. And it's also West Virginia Hall of Fame induction weekend. A member of the West Virginia football team that's being inducted, Bruce Irvin, you can remember from the 2010 and 2011 seasons, a integral part of the Orange Bowl team. His senior year, his junior year, coming out, I think, his 14 and a half sacks his first year as a defender for West Virginia, so it's awesome to have Bruce back in town, a guy who's given back to the athletic department financially and giving his time and energy and coming in this weekend to be a part of it. This is just an awesome thing. It's great to see that Morgantown and West Virginia University still means a lot to Bruce Irvin after a long storied NFL career and being a first-round draft pick. They're also going to be honoring the 1993 football team that went undefeated 12-0 before getting clocked by Florida in the Sugar Bowl, so it'll be great to see that team being honored during the game, because that's a team that really, in the grand scheme of things with West Virginia football history, one of the best. So it's also the John Denver Bowl. Here's a good one for you. I like to hit you with some history before we start off into this matchup. But being the John Denver Bowl, let's call it that, between Texas Tech and West Virginia. Now, Henry John Duschendorf Jr., a.k.a. John Denver, attended but never graduated Texas Tech University, also where the West Virginia ties come in, obviously. He's the artist who sang the hit song Country Roads in 1971 and came to West Virginia when Milan Puskar Stadium opened, flew in on a helicopter and played it for all the fans in attendance that day, and forever will be immortalized just right there along the state with that hit song, Country Roads. So let's break down the history of this matchup before we get into the 2023 edition. The first matchup between Texas Tech and West Virginia took place on New Year's Day, 1938. So it was the 1937 season when West Virginia defeated Texas Tech 7-6 in the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. But since then, 6-6 in the series as Big 12 conference opponents dating back to 2012, and it's really been a series of streaks. Tech winning the first two matchups in 2012 and 2013 before West Virginia went on to win 5 in a row between 2014 and 2018. Texas Tech's won the last 4 games in a row from 2019 to 2022. It's obviously been the monkey on Neil Brown's back since the beginning of his time in Morgantown, and last year was really no exception. Arguably the worst of the Mountaineers, 4 straight losses to Texas Tech. You'll recall after West Virginia came away with that home exhilarating 43-40 Thursday night matchup against Baylor last year at Milan Puskar Stadium. The Mountaineers had 9 days to prepare for the Red Raiders, but laid a massive egg, 48-10 in Lubbock. The Red Raiders scored touchdowns on their first 2 consecutive drives and never looked back from there, never let off the gas, as quarterback Baron Morton threw for 320. He was then a true freshman, Baron Morton, threw for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Taj Brooks and Roderick Thompson rushed for almost 170 yards total and had 3 touchdowns combined. And meanwhile, this was when J.T. Daniels, quarterback for West Virginia last year, was just about hitting free fall. Had 3 picks in this contest. C.J. Donaldson and Tony Mathis had nowhere really to run on the day. 19 carries for just 66 yards. And this was a Texas Tech team that was loud and proud this offseason. You'll recall in July of 2022, their NIL collective, the Matador Club, announced all football players would receive $25,000 contracts with the Matador Club. So they parlayed that with their first-year success under new head coach Joey McGuire to the 33rd comprehensive team recruiting class ranking in the country, which was 4th best in the Big 12, behind Texas, Oklahoma, then TCU, who went to the national championship game, and then it was Texas Tech. So they've been loud, they've been proud. Joey McGuire said over the season that all roads in the Big 12 12 run through Lubbock. So they have their set sight on winning a Big 12 championship this year. But so far, it has been a rough start for the Red Raiders into the 2023 season. Let's take a look at the opponent, being 1-2 on the year. In Week 1, they had a double overtime loss at Wyoming, 35-33 loss to the Cowboys. I really don't care, even though I've been at 43,000 feet altitude. I don't care that Wyoming's at 7,000 feet altitude, so even more so than that. And I felt like at 4,300 feet, I was stroking out, walking up some stairs, because no conference champion can lose a Week 1 game against a G5 opponent and think they're going to go on to glory. This is a team that's flawed. This is not a perfect team whatsoever. I'll break that down in a second. But by losing to Wyoming Week 1, Texas Tech is, to use the cliche line, they aren't who they are who we thought they were. They're not anything more necessarily than you think they are. So in Week 2, they hosted the Oregon Ducks, a nationally ranked team with a high-flying offense under fifth-year senior Bo Nix, but lost that matchup 38-30, blowing a fourth-quarter lead in which Tyler Shuck, their quarterback, threw an interception at the Texas Tech 47-yard line, down one with less than 40 seconds to play. There was a lot more to it than just that, but they had one last chance, really, to try and get the victory, but did not. So then last week, Week 3, against Tarleton State, an FCS opponent, they won 41-3, so really not much that you can say from that game that I think that you can apply toward this matchup. So really in the same vein that how West Virginia fared against Duquesne in Week 2. But breaking down the numbers, this is the same old Texas Tech offense that's going to want to run at G5 forces. They run 74 offensive plays per game on average. They're already scoring 35 points per game on average at 434 yards per game on average. So this is same old high-flying Texas Tech Red Raider offense that you can even go back to the Mike Leach days in the early 2000s. Different, not exactly the same way as Mike Leach, but you can just say that is an offensive brand down there in Lubbock, and this year is no different. So they're led by quarterback Tyler Shuck, who leads the team in carries and passing. 44 carries, leads the team. He's had 137 rushing yards on 44 carries and 2 touchdowns. Through the air, he's averaging 248 passing yards on 62% of a completion percentage, with a touchdown to interception ratio of 7-4. So he has turned the ball over through the air 4 times. Now, the guy who I think that's right on his heels, who we may see in this game, who we saw last year in this matchup against West Virginia, is Barron Morton, their quarterback. True sophomore, went 8 for 13 for 72 passing yards and 11 rush yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception last week against Tarleton. So can't turn the ball over, but he's a gamer. He proved it last year in that game against the Mountaineers. So do not, and I'll still get and break it down when I get into the matchup and my 3 keys, but I would not be shocked whatsoever if Tyler Shuck either gets shook in this matchup, or something happens, or an injury, and you're turning the ball over, you're giving it to Morton, and he picks up and takes this offense to even greater heights. So they have 2 good quarterbacks. Not many who can say it across the country who have 2 good quarterbacks as Texas Tech has on its roster. But taking a look at the running back situation, led by Taj Brooks, averaging 7.2 yards per carry on just 37 carries through 3 games, so hasn't gotten the ball a lot. But Neil Brown said he's an NFL back who's probably the most underrated in the Big 12 during his Monday press conference. So he has high praise for Taj Brooks. Obviously tore up the Mountaineers last year in Lubbock, so he's not being missed in the scouting report by the Mountaineers. That's Brooks. Now I took a look also. 6 pass catchers have 7 or more receptions on the season, led by sophomore outside wide receiver Jaron Bradley at 17 catches for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Like always with Texas Tech, you can't key on any single receiver. They like to get tight ends involved. They like to get the backs involved. They're going to throw the ball around a lot, still having a lot of those same concepts and philosophy of Mike Leach does Joey McGuire, and that's how he likes to run this team. Now, I did find this interesting, that they've had a little bit of trouble so far this season at kicker. Gino Garcia, their place kicker, 5 for 9 in field goal attempts, just 2 of 4 between 40 and 49, and 1 of 3 from 50 plus. So if this comes to a game in which I'll talk to you about it, of kicking field goals, I think based upon what we saw last week, especially out of Michael Hayes in a big situation at home coming through with a 42-yard field goal, I think West Virginia may have the edge there in kickers. Now, the defense is what Texas Tech defense has traditionally been to this point in the year. 25 points per game allowed, 378 yards per game allowed through the air. They're allowing opponents to convert on third down at a 44% clip and on fourth down at 57%. And that's significant because opponents have attempted fourth downs on Texas Tech 7 times and converted 4 of them. So not very stout in their red zone defense. And if you listen to me all offseason, this is the week that will tell us whether West Virginia is 1, better than 2022, 2, this team has the potential to reach its goal of 8 wins, including a bowl game appearance, and 3, it's worth giving Neil Brown through the Houston game. It's big for many reasons. And taking a look around the Big 12 Conference, it's a win that could propel West Virginia into the upper half of the conference. Even though they look really bad against Pitt, especially offensively at times, this beating Texas Tech, it's going to be a whole different beast. And here's why it's also hugely significant. Remember that 48-10 loss last year in Lubbock. Only 13 times, and this is a stat found by the signal caller Jed Drenning from the Mountaineer Sports Network, who does an awesome research all the time. So got to give Jed credit for this one. 13 times in WVU football's history did West Virginia lose to an opponent by 30 or more points in the previous year and then beat them the following year. The most recent being, and this is why I feel a little bit good, that this did happen in the Neil Brown era, in 2021 when West Virginia was throttled by Iowa State in 2020 and then narrowly escaping with a home win 38-31. Remember, that was a game that was crazy for many reasons. The Bryce Ford Wheaton toe-tapping catch that instant replay couldn't even prove, whether he touched the ground or not. The Breece Hall fumble, the way that it ended with Brock Purdy getting sacked, whether he had accumulated a first down, Matt Campbell going crazy. That was just a wild game, and that's the kind of game that I expect on Saturday between the Red Raiders and the Mountaineers. Now, I want to debunk the perceived hangover effect from the Pitt game. And I have a couple of games just to note on that, because that's what everybody was really saying. I've seen it on Twitter. I've heard it from some fans leaving Milan Puskar Stadium. I wonder what the talk will be like in the blue and green lots come Saturday, is this perceived hangover effect after an emotional win against Pitt. So the last time West Virginia had 2 emotional wins beating a rival, notably Virginia Tech, 2021, 2022, it went on the road the following week. West Virginia had a 3-point loss in Oklahoma in 2021. You can remember that game, 16-13, went down to the wire. And then an 18-point, I'll call a blowout loss, in which West Virginia was really non-competitive for 4 quarters against Texas last year. So I think it's huge that this game is at home and coming off a confidence-boosting win. If you listen to Nico Marchiol, who's probably going to get the start at quarterback this upcoming Saturday, and C.J. Donaldson, the running back, on Country Roads Trust podcast earlier in the week, I think it was on Tuesday, they were already moved on. They didn't want to really talk too much about the Pitt game. It was over and done with by that point in their minds. They were already thinking ahead to Texas Tech, so I like that. I think that shows maturity. I think that shows leadership. I love hearing that from Nico. I love hearing every time that kid talks. He just sounds like a gamer. Reminds me more and more by the day, I feel like, of Will Greer or Geno Smith. So I really like what they had to say, that they're thinking ahead already to this matchup with Texas Tech. Pitt's in the past. They're over and done with that, so that's great. And then another note from Jed Drenning, the first time in 5 years that Tech is coming off a win and not pissed off after a loss. And in 3 of the last 4 meetings, Texas Tech was coming into this matchup against West Virginia off a bye week. So both teams playing last week. Again, Texas Tech starting off 0-2 to start the year and coming away with an FCS blowout a week ago at home. West Virginia coming off a motivational win at home against Pitt. So this is the third of 3 home games to start out the season, entering into Big 12 play. Before then, West Virginia goes on to the road at TCU next week, then a bye week going into a Thursday matchup against Houston on the road against Dana Holgorsen. So this is a big one. And here's my 3 keys to victory, in which I'll give you a bit of the matchup too. So obviously, as I've already said, I think that West Virginia is going to be seeing Nico Marchiol at quarterback instead of Garrett Green. The lower ankle sprain that he sustained in the backyard brawl will most probably keep him out of this game on Saturday. If he can't sprint at 100% speed, if he can't use his athleticism, can't use his wheels, what's most dangerous about him, it pretty much sounds like Neil Brown's not putting him into this game, which may be a good thing in a long-term situation for Garrett. But I think the number one key to victory is that West Virginia, or Neil Brown and the offense, have to take the training wheels off Nico Marchiol. That was a very conservative effort last week against Pitt. They're not going to win this kind of game with the way that Texas Tech moves the ball offensively, playing the same kind of not-to-lose offense that they did against Pitt. That was just, I think West Virginia really circled the wagons well. As I said in the recap video against Pitt, smelled blood in the water once Dracovic turned the ball over for the first time, and that West Virginia could just kind of go turtle, bring into itself, just run the ball, not throw anything high risk down the field, and that West Virginia could win the game. And you absolutely needed to win that game first and foremost. But you're not going to be able to do that against Texas Tech. They score way too many points. You're not going to win another 17-6 game against the Red Raiders. So whether he's ready or not is beside the point. You don't have the luxury with Garrett Green nursing that bum ankle. He's your guy for this game, and let's see if this is the start of something magical, of Nico Marchiol as the starting quarterback at West Virginia. I've said this before, and I'll say it again for this video. He is the guy for the future. I think he's the best high school recruited quarterback that West Virginia's had since Geno Smith. So how soon is that future? Is it Saturday, September 23rd, the year of our Lord 2023, at Milan Puskar Stadium, that this is where he officially takes the reins and becomes the team's leader for the foreseeable future? I don't know just yet. So the team needs to help him, though, just like they did in that backyard brawl game, having to make a early game adjustment for him being the starting quarterback. The passing attack needs to step it up with him in under center. An ultra-conservative Neil Brown play calling just is not going to fly in this game. You got to do better, Neil Brown. You got to do better, Chad Scott. You guys got to call a better game for Nico, I think, to take some risks, throw the ball downfield at times, and wide receivers, if you're frustrated for not getting enough opportunities last week and being relegated to blocking roles, this is your time. This is your time to get separation. This is time to catch the football. Cortez Bram, Jeremiah Allen, catch the football. And offensive line, running backs, tight ends, keep doing your thing. The passing attack has to help you out to make this offense more balanced. Marchiol can escape the pocket more so than a JT Daniels or a Jared Deggy or Austin Kendall. So I'm not worried in that regard, that you can still run your spread read option attack, but can't turn the ball over and have to convert through the air, because just running the ball 60 times in this game, I don't know if it's going to work. If it does, keep pounding it. That's what I mean, is do not force, I guess if you don't want to have to force Nico to play outside of himself, if that makes sense. And I think what can really help him out, my second point, defensively, and I'm going to break that down with 2 sub-points. That really counts as one. But defensively, the secondary, I thought keep playing with confidence. You really saw already having more interceptions on the season than they did in 2022. Malachi Ruffin filled into that number 2 cornerback role opposite Beanie Bishop very well. You'll continue to need to rely on Ruffin with Montre Miller going under the knife and done for the year at cornerback. So you're not going to have Miller, a guy who brought out of the transfer portal and are really high on this past spring, to contribute this year. So it's going to have to continue to be Ruffin, going to be Bishop. Do we see a little bit more of Jacoby Spells? I think the strategy for this defense in the secondary, continue to not give up the big play, keep everything in front of you. You can give up yards between the 20s. That's going to happen against Texas Tech. That is no doubt going to happen. That offense, Baylor's offense, they're way too, Texas's offense, I know you don't play, but these Big 12 offenses are going to get theirs. They're going to get yardage between the 20s. It's when it comes down to the red zone is where you can bend but not break. Can't give up any big plays that'll give them momentum like last year. And like I said, Texas Tech does not have a good kicker in Gino Garcia, so force them into field goal situations that they feel uncomfortable, that they may say, or if he misses one, we might try and go for it on 4th down instead, and then, hey, you can try and make a play there. But also, outside of the secondary in the front 6, front 7, you have to continue to rely on Lee Koba and Trey Lathan, the team's 2 leading tacklers, to make one-on-one tackles on Taj Brooks and Tyler Shuck, either when he has designed runs or he escapes the pocket trying to pick up a first down. If Jared Bartlett and the others on the defensive line are going to continue to be responsible for winning the line of scrimmage and getting pressure on the quarterback, in which they're doing a much better job, especially in that Pitt game last week, it's going to rely on Koba and Lathan to be vital on critical 3rd down plays, holding Texas Tech back from achieving first downs. This offense is going to look a lot like Kansas last year, totally different from what West Virginia just experienced against Pitt last week with Phil Dracovic at quarterback. Interceptions are going to be great, but like I said, because Texas Tech has Morton, just because there's a quarterback change, you may be improving by getting Morton into the game over Shuck. So we'll see. I'm just afraid if you shake Shuck's confidence, you're bringing in Morton inspired off the bench. So I'd love to know what Texas Tech fans, if you're watching this video, how do you feel about Baron Morton and the Tyler Shuck situation? Who would you like to see? I'd love to hear. So comment on this video or on Twitter, let me know. So if I'm Jordan Leslie, defensive coordinator, I'd spy Taj Brooks and with Lee Koba, and I'd spy Trey Lathan on Tyler Shuck all game long. Hope that this pass rush can get you enough so that the D-backs can have enough time to stay on their wide receivers in case that Texas Tech tries to go fast. Again, don't pin anything over the top. If they continue to get nickels and dimes down the field, you're going to have to live with that. But you just have to get them off the field, off on 3rd downs, or get some incompletions here or there, or a knockdown or a tackle for loss are always huge in Big 12 football games. So the last thing I'll say, I think it's the mutually beneficial relationship between the crowd and the play on the field, just like in the Pitt game. WVU cannot give up 2 touchdowns on back-to-back defensive possessions like they did in last year's game in Lubbock and fight back the entire game and fight back. It's not going to work against Texas Tech. That you have to match them mano-a-mano, punch for 4 quarters. If West Virginia fans at the stadium can stay engaged as this game goes back and forth, then it's going to be a ball game. That's going to have an effect, as it did, as it has many times in this matchup before. But if it becomes 2019, when West Virginia's defense seemed to mutiny its offense after doing everything in a loss against a ranked Baylor team, and Jet Duffy said, okay, we're just going to serve the knockout punch early, it took the crowd out of the game in the first quarter. So watch out for the early deep shots. Watch out for Texas Tech going for it on every single 4th down play. Survive the early push. Dig in deep like the Spartans against the Persians in 300s, and make this a game that goes down to the 4th quarter. It cannot just be you roll over and you're just taking an onslaught like you did against Penn State in week 1. If you want keep this crowd engaged, keep them behind you. You saw how this team fed off of the crowd last week against Pitt, and I think it can do the same. And with a nice looking weather forecast, Neil Brown is just calling upon that Mountaineer Nation to show up to support this team. The fans believe in the players, so they can support them. I think it's going to be an awesome environment on Saturday. Not as good, obviously, against Pitt, as I've spoken before on many different videos, that the Big 12 opponents just don't bring out the same kind of fervor, is probably the best word for it, that West Virginia does against Pitt. But with that being said, this is an awesome matchup. I think this is a team that's better than their record proved already throughout 3 games into the season. This is a team that wants to contend for the Big 12 conference crowd. They're coming to Morgantown, and like I said, all off season, if West Virginia can end the month of September at 3-2 or better, holy moly, that this team, that's awesome. That's great. I think that just continues to lessen the heat off Neil Brown, takes less heat off the players, conversely, the more pressure it is against Neil Brown, it's also going to permeate throughout the team. The other coaches, the players, they're all going to feel it. They're all going to feel that pressure, that every single win is just going to build confidence and get this program closer to where it needs to be. And to, like I said, get to 8 wins, including a bowl game. So this could be a pivotal moment. I said that. I know I said that last week, but it was like that was the first step. That was the first checkpoint, is you have to beat Pitt in any way, shape, or form at all costs. Now, going against Texas Tech, that's going to prove how much better is this team than last year. Is this going to be a potentially special season or better season than the Big 12 media and all of the haters have prophesied for, of West Virginia having a 14th place finish in this league? You're not finishing 14th if you win this game on Saturday. I can guarantee you that right now. So I'm excited. I'm going to stick with my prediction, though, before the year. And I hate to say this, I really hate to do this, but I'll go with the Red Raiders with a 38-34 point victory at Milan Puskar Stadium. I think it's a game that the Red Raiders just have a little too much offense in many ways, shapes, and forms. I hope I'm proven wrong here. I truly do. I hope that West Virginia can pull it. I'll take another 17-6 game. And I guess good and bad for me is I've been off on the scores pretty much all. I was close in the Duquesne game at least, but I wasn't correct on the Penn State matchup. I wasn't correct last week, thinking it would go down to a field goal, low scoring game. But I just want to see what this offense can do. And if West Virginia can score 34 points, that'll be a really good day. We'll have a lot to talk about come Sunday. So I hope I'm proved wrong. Go Mountaineers. We'll break this game down on Sunday on the recap video. And everybody have a great weekend. If you're in the Green Lot, come over and say hi. I'd love to meet you. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe, share with a friend. You can comment here on YouTube or on Twitter as well. So thanks for tuning in. Hail West Virginia. Let's go.